Hi, I'm Professor Green, and today we'll be talking about Chapter 1, the corporation and its stakeholders. There'll be three parts to this video about Chapter 1. This is the first video. Let's go ahead and get started. So Chapter 1 talks about 6 key learning objectives, and the book starts to talk about Amazon before it even gets into this, right? So it talks about Amazon having a lot of successes, but also a lot of challenges, right? It's been super productive, efficient, profitable, amazing. We have such access to so many products, but at the same time, it's created a lot of quote harm, right? It's pushed a lot of small businesses out of business. It's known as like a workhorse, right? The friends that I have that work for Amazon, they work crazy long hours and they really become quite exhausted after a week or years with Amazon. So is this truly a success? Let's think of that now as we go through the key learning objectives. The first one is understanding the relationship between business and society and how they form an interactive system. The next one is considering the purpose of the modern organization. What is modern organization truly here to do, right? As Amazon, as we said in the book, right? Is it truly just to create a positive bottom line? Knowing what a stakeholder is and who a corporation's market and non-market and internal and external stakeholders are. And we're going to conduct our stakeholder analysis and understanding the basis of stakeholder interest and power. We're going to discuss this a lot in class. And then the last two are recognizing the diverse ways in which modern corporations organize internally to interact with various stakeholders. And lastly, analyzing the forces of change that continually reshape the business and society relationship, right? And COVID obviously is a great example of how the world changed, right? And how businesses and society needed to work together just differently. Let's now define what is business and what is society. Businesses are considered organizations engaged in making a product or providing a service for profit, right? So they truly are looking for to make money. And the book says that there are 6 million businesses in the United States and obviously many more million worldwide. Society is human beings and the social structures they collectively create. I like to think of this as members of a community, a nation, or an interest group. In this course, we're going to talk a lot about interest groups. And so those are people who want to, keep straws out of the ocean, people who are lobbyists, people who have a thought or idea. So that's probably one of your key words already for this course is what's called an interest group. So business and society together form an interactive social system. As you can see here, the society is the bigger whole, and the business is this smaller circle here that now interacts with the society in many different ways. And the three different type of ways that I think of that a business interacts with society is employing employees, right? Hiring people, engaging them, and paying them for what they do. Supplies, that a business will need things, so they will interact with other vendors and buy product. They also borrow money, and in that is also considered government work, government regulations. So lots of different ways that we'll get into a lot further detail here when we talk about how businesses and society together interact. Let's go ahead and hop on to the next slide. This talks about the general systems theory, GST. Here, organisms do not exist in isolation, but can only be understood in relationship to their surroundings. And businesses are embedded in a broader social environment with which they constantly interact, right? And so this is kind of based from the 1940s about how organisms and cells, right, interact within our body or with the plants and animals and things. But this goes further to talk about how corporations have ongoing boundary exchanges with employees, governments, competitors, etc. And again, that as just like the body moves and grows, businesses must also move and grow and adapt, right? So again, this is what we're going to be studying this semester, is all about how all these different stakeholders interact and move together. So what is the purpose of business, you might be asking, right? To whom and what should the firm be responsible? Is it to the stakeholder? Is it to just the shareholders? Freudian slip there, right? That we're going to talk next about the shareholder versus the stakeholder theory. So initially you might think that a business is loyalty is purely just to make money. And so those go to the shareholders, the people who are going to make money off of the organization. But it's not necessarily the total truth. So this course speaks to the shaping of this business and society relationship. Let's get into that shareholder theory of the firm. So this is the one that we're going to speak about the most. This sees the firm as a property. I'm sorry, this one that we're going to be speaking about less, I should say. We're going to be talking about the stakeholder theory. The shareholder theory sees the firm as a property of its owners, the shareholders. The owner interests take precedence over interests of others. And the purpose of the firm is to maximize its long-term market value and money for its shareholders. Obviously, because I come from a business background and I worked for Citibank for a long time, I have an MBA, I'm interested in the shareholder theory, right? I want businesses to make money, for sure. I am an employee, but I realize that there's also another theory out there that makes even more sense than the shareholder theory. That's the stakeholder theory, right? Corporations serve a broad public purpose to create value for society, not just for themselves, right? Profit is necessary for survival, but is not the only purpose of the firm, right? Corporations have multiple obligations and need to consider all stakeholders. And next, we're going to get into what is a stakeholder, but you're starting to get the idea, hopefully, that it's not just the bottom line, right? That there's things like interest groups, right? That making sure that organizations don't create too much waste or air pollution, for example. My personal passion is about creating professional development for employees and making the employees feel that they are valued and that they are looked at as a whole person, not just as a cog in a wheel to make money for the organization. And also the firm has an obligation to society that it needs to make innovative products, right? Where would we be without the COVID vaccine, right? Things would be very, very different potentially if Pfizer and all those different companies hadn't created an innovative product to allow us to continue with society. So let's go ahead and talk now about the next slide here, shareholder theory versus stakeholder theory, defining the purpose of business differently. And again, this is just a summary of what I was just talking about. Right here on the left-hand side, shareholder purpose is the only the owner's needs and wants and the sharing the value. But the stakeholder purpose is the stakeholders' needs and wants. And there are three main arguments in support of the stakeholder theory of the firm, again, which is the one that we're going to be speaking about most this semester. The first one is descriptive, then normative, and then instrumental. Let's go ahead and talk first about the descriptive, right? So this is more what they say as realistic. This is the government, the employees, the products, innovation. So realistic description of how companies really work. And then we talk about normative, and that is where we talk about this is the right thing to do, right? And so this is what the book speaks about, where an engineer for Microsoft or for Google, they create an innovative product or innovative software for their company. And so then the right thing to do is to pay that employee for that work, right? It's creativity that will then help them create more products. And so the right thing to do is this normative argument. And then the last one is the instrumental. And this is where it says the stakeholder consideration is key for effective corporate strategy. And this is where research shows that if an organization is more interested in stakeholder theory, then it's going to be more profitable in the long term. So because they have good relationships with their vendors and with their employees and with their interest groups, then they will be able to be more efficient and they'll be able to create better products and be more innovative. So these are the three major arguments that when people talk about why should we talk about stakeholder theory. And the example that they gave in the book, which I thought was super interesting, was talking about the dollar stores, right? Who shops at the dollar store? That they talk about Family Dollar in particular. So Family Dollar, right, wanted to go out and sell the company. And they had two company organizations that were interested. First, it was the Dollar Tree, and then it was Dollar General. We have all three of these here in California, so hopefully you're familiar with the different types potentially. So the first one, Dollar Tree, offered a lower price per share to buy Family Dollar, $76.50. And then Dollar General offered a higher price, $80. So of course, Family Dollar will probably say, I'm going to take the higher price per share, so I get more money for my acquisition here. But at the end of the day, Family Dollar chose what was the right thing to do. Had they gone with the higher price with Dollar General, they would have had to shut down a lot of stores because they would have entered an antitrust conflict. There would have been too many stores in too small of an area. And so a lot of low-income communities would have been left without some sort of low-cost supermarket or major market, right? So they decided that they didn't want to leave those communities without these stores. And so Family Dollar decided to then accept the lower price per share from Dollar General and sold the company to Dollar General, to Dollar Tree instead, because it was better for society. So hopefully that all makes sense. And I look forward to discussing with you the next section. We're going to start with stakeholders.